What came first for the Warriors, the idea about landing Chris Paul or the desire to unload Jordan Poole? That's not the only question surrounding last week's big trade, which sent Poole, Patrick Baldwin Jr., and Ryan Rollins to the Wizards and rerouted Paul to the Warriors on his way out of Phoenix. When a talented 24-year-old and two 20-year-olds get traded for a 38-year-old point guard on a team that is not lacking 30-somethings, actuarial table questions absolutely should be raised. But right now, I'm focused on the thought process and the priority order of this trade, because if you can figure those out, you can understand almost everything the Warriors are thinking about themselves right now as the Mike Dunleavy Jr. era begins. You can identify how the Warriors are preparing for the future. You can see what might come next. What's clear to me after a few days of checking around is that this all began when the Warriors decided that Poole was an extraneous and inefficient member of their roster. That was the precipitating issue. The Warriors wanted out of the $123 million deal they gave Poole only 8 months earlier because his play last season didn't meet that value, especially given their extreme luxury tax pressures. They knew he wanted a bigger role, and they knew that almost certainly wouldn't happen as long as Stephen Curry and Klay Thompson were on the team. The Warriors weren't going to give Poole away, but they were ready to move on if the right deal came along. One of the Warriors' calls, I'm told, was to check with Toronto about a proposal centering on Poole for 25-year-old forward OG Anunoby. But the Raptors weren't interested. According to Yahoo Sports' Jake Fisher, the Warriors also had talks with the Celtics and had interest from the Spurs. Though it's hard to come up with good trade matches for Poole on either team. But it was now obvious, the Warriors were shopping Poole. Soon, the Warriors got in touch with the Wizards, and just like that, Paul, on a short-term deal, was headed to the Warriors as a reliable alternative ball handler behind and alongside Curry and a mature presence in the locker room. The Warriors achieved their goal. They got rid of Poole's long-term money without making themselves worse, and probably actually got better in the short term. The Warriors are aiming to drop below the second payroll apron by next July, which is when the most punitive aspects of the new CBA start hitting. They want their taxpayer mid-level exception back. They used part of their MLE to sign Dante DiVincenzo last summer. But the new CBA has taken their MLE away, which is why they won't be able to re-sign him now that DiVincenzo has declined his player option for the coming season. They don't want to be banned from being able to aggregate salaries in trades. And they don't want their future first-round picks frozen. They simply don't want to get stuck in second apron hell without many of the tools they've used in the past to add talent. And now the Warriors have two ways out next July. They can let Paul go after this season. His $30 million contract for 2024 to 25 is non-guaranteed. They can let Klay go after this season, or they can re-sign one or both for much less money. If they let both go, the Warriors could even get all the way out of the luxury tax and reset their repeater tax count. All of this, of course, is presuming that Draymond Green signs a new multi-year deal with the Warriors in the next few days. But that seemed likely for weeks. And the Poole-Paul trade underlines the general understanding that all of the Warriors' plans include Curry and Draymond together for several more years. If they had acquired Anunoby, who theoretically could have taken Draymond's spot in the starting lineup, maybe things would have penciled out differently for the lineup and the accounting. But Anunoby can become a free agent after this season, which would have thrown some uncertainty into the whole process. And Toronto wouldn't do the deal anyway. Now the Warriors can operate as if Paul is on a one-year, $30.8 million prove-it deal. If he plays tremendously and there's a parade in June, they can think about guaranteeing next season's contract. Obviously, the Warriors would love to have to make that decision. Or they can talk about signing Paul for less money. Or they can sign and trade him. Or they can guarantee 24-25 and put him on the trade market as an expiring contract. Back in July 2019, Bob Myers convinced Kevin Durant to let the Warriors turn his departure to the Nets into a sign-and trade that sent D'Angelo Russell back to the Warriors, Not because Myers loved Russell as a player, but because that was the only way to add a tradable asset at that kind of salary range. This deal isn't the same as that one, but Dunleavy was in the room when the Durant-Russell negotiations happened, I'll put it that way. The Poole trade also clears up a few other things for the Warriors heading into Friday's start of the free agent period. First, I don't think Dunleavy and Joe Lacob ever really considered trading Klay this offseason, but now that door seems all but closed. The Warriors still want to compete for a title this season, and there's just no Klay trade out there that would make them better. There's no way they could sell this to Curry. There's no way they could sell it to themselves, frankly. And with Poole gone, there's more future money available once and when the Warriors and Klay start talking about an extension. The Warriors have 3 or 4 available roster spots, depending on whether they use their 15th roster spot, which seems unlikely, only minimum salary slots to offer and a need to add at least one big man, preferably who can shoot threes, and at least one guard. But this is a pretty bleak free agent market. I was going to put Memphis Xavier Tillman at the top of a potential Warriors minimum salary shopping list, but unsurprisingly, Memphis picked up his contract for next season. Beyond that, maybe Oklahoma City's Dario Saric is the most interesting potential candidate, though I can see another team offering him more than the minimum. How about the Nets' Yuta Watanabe? He isn't a center, but he made 44.4% of his threes last season. And I can picture Steve Kerr putting him in the corner as a second unit outlet for the CP3 Jonathan Kuminga pick-and-roll game and then faking it on the defensive post. Other big man options: Denver's Thomas Bryant, Miami's Kevin Love, or Milwaukee's Thanasis Antetokounmpo, and yes, I just put that last one in to see if you were paying attention to conspiracy theory signings. In other positional categories, if the Warriors are looking for good chemistry and veteran savvy, what about the return of Juan Toscano-Anderson, last with Utah, or Damian Lee, Phoenix? Or familiar foe and friend Rudy Gay, now with Atlanta? Let's finish this off with a quick thought on Dunleavy's first week as general manager. So far, he's traded Poole a few days after declaring that he hoped Poole would be a Warrior for many years. He's added a future Hall of Famer/former Fierce Warriors rival. He's traded away last year's first and second round picks. He's drafted Brandon Podziemski in the first round, maneuvered to land Tracy Jackson-Davis in the second, and he's trimmed about $100 million in future salaries. Dunleavy, like Myers before him, isn't going to get everything right. But Dunleavy, like Myers, just seems to be in every deal conversation and eager to start new ones. He's acting like he's been waiting a few years to do this and had about 400 pent-up ideas ready to go. And Joe Lacob wouldn't want his GM to do it any other way.